Hi, so my name is Leah Michael, and I am going to be recording this video for Mr. Greckel's Theology 206 class for Walsh University. So I am a sophomore at Walsh, and I'm a professional writing major. So for beginners, I wanted to start with my faith life before taking this course. It's not phenomenal. My faith life has never been phenomenal. There were points in my life and during my schooling where, especially during high school, where I was appointed to certain roles, I guess. So one role that was very religiously important, I guess, was that we would have adorations during we would have adoration during one point during the week. We would have adoration at some point during the week in the evening, and there would be students who would pray over other students. So it was like a student-led prayer group, and there were leaders in this group, and I was appointed to be one of the leaders. They prayed about it and said that God said that I would be a good choice, which was very concerning to me because I was not at a good place in my faith life at all at the time. I was not praying. I didn't think too highly of God. There were things going on in my life that kind of drove me away from God, I would say. Not anything too crazy, more so just like my own mental health not being the best during high school. So I was not all there with Catholic teaching and the Catholic faith. I wasn't happy with my theology teachers during high school. I just was not all there. I think my freshman year I was a lot more willing to step into the Catholic faith, but before taking this course, I have not made any great strides in my religious beliefs or making great strides in a sense that I am praying more or going to do the rosary more, especially recently as classes start to get harder and harder and maybe I start to interact with more people in my life. I made that as a huge thing in my journal entries. I think I've talked about that a lot, is my interactions with people, how that changes me, how that makes me as a person, and where that I can get my footing with that. And whereas some people may be able to get their footing with God, I don't see that as necessary. I see more so my interactions with people as God, as kind of my prayer, I guess you could say. But I don't necessarily view it as religious, so that is definitely something I have to work on. But throughout the time of this course, I was able to figure out where I stood with my faith. So the journal entries, the prayer journals especially, were nice. They tested me to actually pray. I've never been one for prayer. I've never been one to sit down and just think. Especially with Lectio Divina, that one was particularly challenging for me, because I really just have a hard time just seeing anything. In high school, there would be moments of Lectio Divina where we would look at the scripture, pick out a verse that stood out to us, and then we would think upon that verse and try and find a word or a phrase that stood out to us, and I just never could. No matter how many times I read it over, no matter how many verses I flip through, how many scripture verses, maybe I chose the next chapter over. Maybe I would, instead of Matthew, I looked at John. Instead of John, I looked at Luke. It just wouldn't help. No matter what I did, nothing ever stood out to me. I never heard anything, never felt anything. That was the same with prayer or during adoration. These huge displays of God, people getting slain with the Spirit, speaking of tongues, all this extreme experiences never happened to me. And I always, for the longest time, wondered, what is wrong with me? There has to be something wrong with me, especially in the sense of retreats. I was never one for retreats during high school or during my my past religious experiences. I went to maybe one retreat and I did not have a good time. The testimonies spoken of there were great, again, extreme experiences with God, whereas my experiences with God seemed subtle and minuscule in comparison and just didn't mean anything. I felt inferior when I was there. So I also went on the this past agape retreat. So again, me trying to reach out with my faith. No biters, nothing, no cigar, if you will. I just felt, again, during agape, I just felt behind. I felt everyone had it figured out when I was still trying to reach for straws. The teachings, there were no testimonies this time, so I don't know if that was a benefit or a negative, but I never had a fondness. I guess religion was just never all that. We did it. Like I said, I grew up Catholic. I grew up believing in the faith. Have all my sacraments. I'm good with that. But it was never just an amazing a part of my life. And throughout the time of this course, I realized that, well, I'm not making time for God. Albeit there have been moments in this course where I reached out. So I believe just recently we were talking about the communion of saints, and I thought it was funny because earlier this year I was going to the saints for help. I was going specifically to St. Jude. I mentioned in my prayer journals many times St. Jude because he was the patron saint of lost causes or hopeless cases, I believe, and this situation that I was going through, I just was like, oh, it's such a lost cause. Like, there are so many things going on that just make it horrible. So I just wrote it off as that. There's just nothing good could come from this. So I prayed to St. Jude, especially at Walsh University. There is that prayer garden with a statue of St. Jude. So I'd always just go there, stand in front of St. Jude, and I would practice, I believe it was meditation, the meditative prayer, which is a prayer we talked about, where I would just stand there, look at St. Jude. Sometimes I would engage in a conversation just with myself, just talking through everything that was going on, and it helped a lot. This course definitely opened my eyes to approaching faith during just troubling times. College definitely has its ups and downs. There have been many of roller coasters this past semester, which I am grateful for, in a sense. I spoke also in my prayer journals, because I was not so social in high school. I never made this clear in my prayer journals, but because I was not all that social in high school, I'm kind of making up for it now. And with every social interaction I get, with every new person I meet, with every connection I make, it means the world to me. And I wonder if that is where I thrive in terms of my vocation, my calling, is that I can meet as many people as once, and to kind of grasp that and maybe apply God to that, if that makes sense. With the different forms of prayer, because there are so many forms, I wondered, and I am wondering now, if prayer could be done without essentially praying. In my everyday interactions with people, could that be a form of prayer? Could that be a form of loving God in a way that I give people my all, I engage as I see fit, and maybe that's enough, and maybe that can be how I approach God, because in other aspects of religion, of faith, I just don't feel, not necessarily welcomed, I don't feel like I thrive. I don't feel like I get anywhere with just simple prayer, with just a rosary. I don't get anywhere. In fact, I get frustrated. Especially with the theology of the body lesson during this course definitely got me heated a little bit. But that's just, I'm also trying to work on perspectives. Christopher West said that because of his perspective, because of his belief, and I have to realize that I can't necessarily criticize him for that. because that's how he was taught, because that's how it is essentially in the Catholic faith. I can't necessarily refute that because of a belief system. I can't really pick it apart and stuff and try to, put my own little words in there. So I took it as is, and I said that I was not very happy with it. I'm not going to lie and say that I learned something from it when I didn't. It just made me infuriated, but that's fine. A lot of things in the faith have made me angry before, and whereas before I just would step away from my faith and maybe this just isn't it, I take it as is, and I'm like, okay, well, this is someone saying this, not necessarily God. I have my own relationship with him, and that's where I plan to go in the future. Is I have my own relationship with God, and not perfect. No one's is perfect, let's be honest here. No one's praying 4 rosaries a day and being a saint to everyone they meet. I mean, they can try, but it's hard sometimes. It really is. But I'm definitely trying to get better at that. And I'm trying to take every day as is. So before, I used to base my day off of my faith, I guess, if that makes sense. So if I had a really horrible day or something horrible happened, say like a tragic death happened in my family, I would blame God. I would be upset, infuriated again, that anger. So I would not do well. But I wanted to end with, again, my end goal and maybe how that pertains to my future and how I can better strive towards my faith. So like I said, my interactions with people, they're a big part of my life. So with that, I'm going to make this a challenge for myself. I'm going to try to treat everyone with respect. I'm going to engage in conversation with those that maybe I don't want to engage in conversation with. Maybe I would rather step away from them. But I'm going to try my best to make those little gestures of friendship, of welcomeness, because in the past years, like, and especially in high school, I would struggle kind of silently, and whereas my friends, they weren't necessarily all that aware of what I was going through, so they kind of brushed it off, which I don't really blame them for. It's hard to deal with someone who is sad or anxious or experiencing these extreme emotions, especially when you're not so sure what to do about it. So I don't really blame them for that. I experienced a lot of loneliness in high school, and I don't want that to happen again. Also, I wasn't that social in high school, so I'm trying to make up for that and maybe put my own little spin on it, because after taking this course, I realized that I can do everything with a little like tinge of prayer in it, or an intention of God. Even if I'm not that deep in my faith, I still want to try and approach life with a faithful shade to it, I guess. With my interactions, like I said, I could be welcoming to all those around me. I can be respectful in my future career, whatever that may be, whether I do write books or go on to something else. I want to take the time for everyone I meet. I want to make those connections, and I want to be genuine with people. I feel like people today aren't so genuine. It's hard to find genuine people. It's hard to find people who are willing to deal with those awkward moments where you are experiencing maybe a depression of some kind, or anxiety or fear, or anger or hatred towards the world. It's hard to find friends who will take a step back and sit and meet you where you're at. I feel like a lot of my friends previously, either they ignored me and what I was going through, which is understandable. That's just how they deal with things, and you can't force them to change that. Or you could have friends who try to fix you, when sometimes you just need friends to meet you where you're at and to talk with you like you're a normal human being. Just because you are experiencing anxiety or depression of some kind, it does not mean that you're some sort of creature or like a fragile object that like no one wants to break. I'm still human, you know, still talk with me, engage with me as if I am human. So that's kind of what I want to do going forward, is to make those connections and interactions with people and to make them special, to make everyone a memory to be cherished, to make everyone filled with, not everyone's gonna be filled with laughter all the time, but like a joyous one, or a good one that sits well with the other party. So that's kind of what this course has taught me, is how my interactions with people could change my life and to make me into a better Catholic, a better person in general, and to even make other people better Catholics themselves, setting an example, or even just being that good person. Sometimes you just need a hello, sometimes you just need a how are you doing today, or a friendly conversation. Just take a few minutes to talk with a person. If they want to talk, stop and talk with them. I mean, I know we're college students, we're busy, but just give them that time of day and they'll appreciate it and they'll remember it. They really will. So that's where I kind of stand now and in my future goals with my faith. Thank you again for this wonderful course. It's taught me a lot, and it's taught me how to not to challenge religion, but to really dig deep and to answer questions meaningfully, to ask questions meaningfully, to express concerns or misgivings evenly without any disregard for it, because I know that what I said in my Christopher West discussion post, I think it was a response. I definitely expressed distaste toward it, and I was not given points off for it. I was applauded for giving my reasoning, yet still having an open mind. That is important. Have an open mind, have an open perspective, but be willing to hear all perspectives. That is my take on my future and how I progress forward. So thank you again.